The package had no name on it, no return address, no delivery company, nothing that could explain why it was sitting outside my front door on a Tuesday morning. But there was one thing inside that made my hands go cold. A photograph of my husband, Anthony Hunter, taken years before I knew him. And written on the back were 6 words: "You don't know who he was." I wish I could say I immediately confronted him. I didn't. I did what most people do when something threatens the life they built. I looked for another explanation. Because trusting someone for years creates a strange kind of blindness. You don't just trust the person, you trust the version of reality you created with them. My name is Emma Hughes, and before that package arrived, I believed my marriage was built on honesty. Anthony and I were not the couple people noticed in a room. We were quieter than that. We had routines. Coffee together every morning, Sunday walks, little arguments about things that didn't matter. He always forgot where he left his keys. I always forgot to buy enough groceries, normal things, safe things. That was what I loved most. After growing up in a home where secrets were everywhere, I wanted a life where nobody had to guess what was happening behind closed doors. Anthony knew that. Maybe that was why the truth hurt so much. He knew exactly what I feared, and he still hid something from me. The first time I asked him about the photograph, he barely looked surprised. That was the first thing that scared me. Not the answer, the reaction. "Where did you get that?" he asked. Not who sent it, not what is this, just where did you get that? I watched his face carefully. For a second, I saw someone remembering something. Then it disappeared. "It's probably someone trying to cause trouble," he said. That explanation sounded reasonable, almost too reasonable, and I wanted to accept it. But the next morning, another package arrived. Inside was an old newspaper article. A different name, a different city, but the same man, Anthony. Only he wasn't Anthony Hunter. The article used another last name. I felt like I was looking at a stranger wearing my husband's face. When I asked him again, he finally admitted it. Years before we met, he had changed his name, but he said it was not because he was hiding something terrible. He said he was escaping something. "I made mistakes," he told me. "What kind of mistakes?" He looked away. "The kind people don't forgive." That answer created more questions than it answered. I started searching, not because I wanted to punish him, because I needed to know if the person sleeping beside me was real. I found pieces, old addresses, old accounts, old messages, everything connected to a time in his life he never mentioned. Then came the third package. This one contained a letter, a threat. Someone knew Anthony's past. Someone wanted money. And suddenly the mystery changed. Anthony was not only hiding his past, someone was using it against him. The police called it blackmail. Anthony called it a mistake coming back. I called it terrifying. For weeks, our home changed. Every phone notification made him nervous. Every unknown number made him leave the room. Every conversation stopped when I entered. The marriage I thought was safe became a place full of locked doors. Finally, I asked him the question I had been avoiding. "Are you dangerous?" Anthony looked hurt. Not angry, hurt. "No." "Then tell me the truth." He sat down, and for the first time, he stopped trying to protect his secret. Before he met me, Anthony had worked for a company involved in financial fraud. He was not the person who created it, but he helped cover mistakes. He lied. He signed documents. He stayed quiet because he was afraid. When everything collapsed, he cooperated with investigators and left the city. He changed his name because he wanted a second chance, a new life, a life with me. I wanted to understand, I really did, but understanding someone does not erase what they did. The hardest part was not discovering he had a past. Everyone has one. The hardest part was discovering he decided I was not strong enough to know it. Then the biggest twist came. The person sending the packages was not an enemy. It was someone Anthony had once helped, someone from his old life. A man named Daniel who believed Anthony had ruined his future by cooperating with investigators. Daniel wanted revenge. But the final truth was even harder to accept. Anthony had known about Daniel for months. He knew the blackmail might eventually reach me, and he never told me. Why? Because he was afraid, not of losing money, of losing me. He thought if he protected me from the truth, he could protect our marriage. Instead, he destroyed the one thing he was trying to save: trust. I left the house, not because I stopped loving him, that would have been easier. I left because I no longer knew where the truth ended and the lies began. My family split. Some people told me to forgive him. Others told me I was foolish for ever believing him. Nobody understood that I was not choosing between love and anger. I was choosing between the person I knew and the person I discovered. Months passed. Anthony never stopped trying to explain. Eventually, he stopped asking me to come back. That was when I noticed something different. He was finally respecting my choice. No pressure, no excuses, just acceptance. The last message he sent me was simple: I should have trusted you with the truth before I asked you to trust me. I read it many times because that was the sentence I had been waiting for, not an apology for being caught, not an explanation, an understanding. A year later, I met him for coffee. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't. Some damage does not disappear, but I wanted to see the person behind all those secrets. He looked older, calmer, different. I don't expect anything, he said. I know. And I know I don't deserve you forgetting. I won't forget. He nodded, and somehow that was enough. We did not immediately become a couple again. There was no perfect reunion, no magical repair. Just two people sitting across from each other, admitting that love can survive things that trust cannot. The person who sent the packages changed my life, but not because he revealed Anthony's past. He revealed something deeper, that the man I loved was not a monster. He was a person who made terrible choices and spent years trying to outrun them. And the woman I became after discovering the truth was someone who finally understood that forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. The last time I saw Anthony, he was standing outside the cafe holding the photograph that started everything. The same photograph that once made me feel like my whole life was fake. He looked at it, then he put it away, and walked forward, not back into the life we had, but toward the person he should have become years before I ever met him. The moment Wyatt saw Amy's face change, he knew the conversation was not about what she was saying. It was about what she was hiding. They were standing in their kitchen, the same place where they had planned their future, celebrated small victories, and promised each other that honesty would always come first. Then Landon said one name, a name from a past Wyatt knew nothing about. Amy stopped moving. Her hand froze around the coffee cup. For a second, the confident woman Wyatt trusted disappeared, replaced by someone who looked afraid. That was the moment Wyatt understood something painful. Sometimes the truth does not arrive with proof. Sometimes it arrives with a reaction. For years, Wyatt believed trust was the strongest part of his relationship with Amy. They were not perfect. They argued about money. They disagreed about decisions. They struggled like every couple did. But Wyatt believed there was one thing they still had. They chose each other. Their partnership had started during a difficult time in both their lives. Wyatt was rebuilding after losing his previous business, and Amy was trying to create stability for herself and her son. They did not have an easy beginning, but they built something together. Wyatt became a father figure who cared deeply about protecting their home. He wanted his family to have the security he never had growing up. Amy knew that. She knew his biggest fear was failing the people who depended on him. Maybe that was why she kept certain things from him. At first, the changes were small. Amy became nervous whenever old conversations came up. She avoided certain places. She reacted strangely when Wyatt mentioned people from years ago. Wyatt noticed, but he also ignored it. Because sometimes love makes people explain away things they would question in anyone else. Then Landon entered their lives again. He was someone Amy knew from the past, not a close friend, not family, just someone who appeared unexpectedly. Wyatt noticed something strange immediately. Landon looked uncomfortable around Amy, not angry, not threatening, just uncomfortable. One evening, after a casual dinner, Landon accidentally mentioned something. You still haven't told him? The room went silent. Amy quickly interrupted. That's not what you think. Wyatt looked between them. Then tell me what I should think. Neither of them answered. That silence became the first crack. Over the next few weeks, Wyatt started noticing more. Amy receiving messages and deleting them. Phone calls that stopped when he entered the room. A sudden fear whenever certain topics appeared. He did not want to become suspicious. He hated the person he was becoming. A man checking details. A man searching for signs. A man wondering if the person beside him was telling the truth. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Wyatt overheard Amy and Landon arguing. He was not trying to listen. He was walking past the room when he heard Amy whisper, "You promised you would never use that against me." Wyatt stopped. Use what? Against her? The words followed him for days. Eventually, he confronted Amy. What did Landon mean? Amy looked exhausted, not defensive, exhausted. There are things about my past you don't know. Wyatt felt his chest tighten. How many things? Amy could not answer. That hurt more than the secret itself. The first truth was smaller than Wyatt expected. Years earlier, before she met Wyatt, Amy had made a serious mistake. She had been involved in a business partnership that failed badly. There were debts. There were people angry at her, and Landon knew about it. But Wyatt soon discovered there was more. Landon had not returned because he wanted to help Amy. He had returned because he wanted control. He had information that could damage her reputation. He threatened to reveal her past unless she helped him financially. Amy had been trapped. But Wyatt still felt betrayed. Not because she had a difficult past, because she had decided he could not handle the truth. You didn't trust me enough to tell me, Wyatt said. Amy looked at him. I trusted you. I just didn't trust that you wouldn't look at me differently. That sentence stayed with him. Because Wyatt understood fear. He had spent years hiding his own failures because he was afraid people would see him differently too. But understanding did not erase the pain. The second twist came when Wyatt discovered Landon's real connection to their partnership. He had not just known Amy's secret. He had been trying to destroy what they built. Years ago, Landon blamed Amy for his own financial mistakes. He convinced himself that ruining her life would somehow balance the pain he felt. The blackmail was never about money alone. It was about revenge. But the biggest revelation came later. Wyatt found out Amy had actually tried to tell him the truth months earlier. She had written everything down, every mistake, every fear, every detail. But she never gave him the letter. Why? Because on the same week she planned to confess, Wyatt had a major business failure. He came home broken. He told her he could not survive losing another person's trust. Amy saw his pain, and she chose silence. It was the wrong choice, but it came from fear, not cruelty. The final confrontation happened when Wyatt met Landon alone. Landon expected anger. He expected threats. Instead, Wyatt asked one question. Why did you keep hurting her? Landon smiled. Because people like Amy always get away with pretending they're innocent. Wyatt realized something then. Landon did not want justice. He wanted someone else to carry his pain. Wyatt made a decision. He exposed everything, not publicly to destroy Amy, but honestly to stop the manipulation. The truth came out, Landon's threats, his lies, the pressure he had created. Amy was finally free from the fear she had lived with. But freedom did not repair everything immediately. Wyatt and Amy still had to face what happened between them. The trust they lost could not be rebuilt in one conversation. For a while, Wyatt wondered if walking away would be easier. Maybe some damage was too deep. Maybe love was not enough. Then Amy gave him the letter she had written months earlier. He read it alone. Inside were not excuses. There was no attempt to make herself look better. There was only regret. She admitted she had protected a secret instead of protecting their relationship. Wyatt cried because he realized something painful. He had spent so long wanting the truth that he forgot truth could also hurt the person brave enough to give it. Months later, Wyatt and Amy were not the same couple. They were different, more careful, more honest. They stopped pretending fear did not exist. They talked about things they once avoided. They rebuilt slowly. Landon disappeared from their lives completely. The damage he caused remained part of their story, but it no longer controlled them. Wyatt never forgot the moment Amy's face changed after hearing that name. At the time, he thought that was the moment trust died. Years later, he saw it differently. That was the moment the truth finally entered their home. And even though it broke something, it also gave them the only chance they had to rebuild it. The folder was already open when Jason found it. A few papers had slipped onto the floor beside the old cabinet in the hallway. At first, he thought it was just another forgotten box from the divorce. Then he saw Claire's handwriting, and underneath it, a number that made his stomach drop. A debt. A debt that explained years of silence, strange decisions, and one promise that had quietly destroyed a family. Jason had spent years believing he was the person who had been abandoned. He was wrong. The truth was harder, because the person he blamed had been carrying a burden he never understood, and the person who suffered the most was the child both of them had promised to protect. Years earlier, Jason believed he had finally built the family he always wanted. After losing his first marriage, he promised himself he would become a better father. He worked harder. He listened more. He wanted his child to grow up knowing that someone would always be there. When Claire entered his life, she seemed to fit perfectly. She was patient, she was calm, she understood the damage left behind from Jason's divorce. "You don't have to be perfect," Claire told him once. "You just have to show up." Jason remembered those words for years because he tried. Every school event, every difficult conversation, every night when his child needed him, he showed up. But Claire had secrets she never shared. At first they were small: a missed phone call, a strange expression when bills arrived, a sudden change of subject when Jason mentioned money. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. And Jason had his own problems. He was proud. Too proud. After the divorce, he hated feeling like he had failed. He wanted everyone to see him as the father who recovered, the man who rebuilt. So when Claire told him everything was under control, he believed her. Maybe because he trusted her, maybe because he wanted to. Then came the financial problems. A few payments were late, a few plans were delayed. Claire always had an explanation. "It's temporary. The business will recover. We just need time." Jason accepted every answer. Until the day he found the folder. The documents inside were not what he expected. There were unpaid loans, old agreements, letters from companies demanding repayment, and Claire's name appeared everywhere. When Jason confronted her, she did not become angry. She became quiet. That scared him more. "What is this?" Jason asked. Claire looked at the papers. "I was going to tell you." "When?" She looked away. "I don't know." That answer hurt more than the debt itself, because Jason realized the truth had been sitting inside their home for years, waiting, watching, growing. He felt humiliated, not only because of the money, because he believed everyone else knew before him. He wondered how many conversations happened without him, how many people looked at him and thought he was foolish. That feeling turned into anger, and anger made him make choices he later regretted. Jason started looking for someone to blame. Claire became the only person he could see. "You let me believe everything was fine," he said. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I was trying to keep everything from falling apart. But you let me build my life on a lie." The divorce came quickly after that. Friends chose sides. Family members whispered. Everyone created their own explanation. Some believed Claire was irresponsible. Others believed Jason was too controlling. But nobody knew the entire story, not even Jason. Months after they separated, Jason discovered another piece of the puzzle. The debt had not started because Claire was careless. It started because she had made a promise. Years earlier, before Jason met her, Claire had helped someone close to her avoid losing everything. She signed agreements she did not fully understand. She believed she was helping. Instead, she inherited the consequences. The problem was not only the debt, it was the shame. Claire had spent years trying to erase a mistake from her past, and every time she tried to fix it, she created another secret. Jason struggled with that truth. He wanted to stay angry. Anger was easier. If Claire was simply wrong, then leaving made sense. But if she was scared, If she was someone who made a terrible choice while trying to protect others, that complicated everything. Then, Jason found the final document, the one that changed how he saw the entire situation. The debt was not the only thing Claire had hidden. She had also been secretly making payments for years. She had taken extra work, sold personal belongings, given up things she wanted, all without telling anyone. She was not hiding because she wanted a comfortable life. She was hiding because she was afraid Jason would see her as a failure. And Jason understood something painful. He had spent years trying to prove he was not the man who failed his family. Claire had spent years trying to prove she was not the woman who ruined one. They were both trapped by the same fear, the need to appear strong. When Jason finally spoke to Claire again, neither of them knew what to say. "You should have trusted me," Jason said. Claire nodded. "I know. I would have helped. I know that now." The silence between them carried years of regret. Then Claire said something Jason never expected. "I wasn't only afraid you would leave because of the debt." Jason looked at her. "What else?" She took a breath. "I was afraid you would realize you were happier without me." That sentence stayed with him. Because he realized Claire had not only been hiding money, she had been hiding how broken she felt. Jason wanted revenge at first. He wanted everyone to know what happened. He wanted people to understand that he had been hurt. But after learning the truth, revenge felt different. It no longer felt like justice. It felt like another way to keep destroying the family they had already lost. So Jason made a different choice. He took responsibility, not for Claire's debt, not for her mistakes, for his own part. He admitted that he had ignored warning signs because believing was easier than questioning. He admitted that his pride mattered too much. He started rebuilding his relationship with his child first, slowly, patiently, without pretending everything was fixed. Claire also began rebuilding, not back into the marriage, but into a more honest life. Years later, Jason looked back at that folder differently. It was not the thing that destroyed his family. It was the thing that finally revealed why it had already been breaking. He never forgot the pain. He never forgot the divorce, but he also stopped seeing Claire as the enemy. She was someone who made mistakes, someone who carried fear too long, someone who tried to protect everyone and ended up hurting the people closest to her. Jason and Claire never returned to the life they had before. That version of them was gone. But they found a different kind of peace, not the easy kind, the kind built after admitting the truth. The folder that once represented betrayal eventually became the symbol of the moment Jason stopped asking who was guilty and started asking what needed to be repaired. Some things cannot be restored, some years cannot be returned, but sometimes after everything falls apart, people finally become honest enough to build something new. For a long time after the divorce, Jason kept the folder locked away, not because he wanted to remember the pain, because he was afraid of forgetting what it had taught him. He had spent years believing that the worst moment of his life was discovering Claire's secret. Later, he realized the worst moment was not the discovery. It was all the time before it. The years when two people lived in the same house but carried different fears. The nights when Claire sat awake trying to solve problems alone. The mornings when Jason left for work believing he was protecting his family. Both of them thought they were sacrificing for love. Both of them were slowly creating distance. Jason eventually learned that redemption did not mean pretending nothing happened. It meant accepting that the past existed and choosing what to do next. He met Claire once more at their child's graduation. They stood across the room, surrounded by people who had no idea how much history existed between them. For a moment, neither moved. Then Claire smiled. Not the confident smile she used when hiding problems, a real one. "You look different," she said. Jason nodded. "So do you." There was no anger in the conversation, no attempt to rewrite what happened, just two people who finally understood the cost of keeping everything hidden. "I'm sorry," Claire said quietly. Jason looked at her for a long time. "I know." It was not forgiveness that erased everything. It was acceptance. They had both lost something, a marriage, a version of their future, the belief that love alone could fix every mistake. But they had gained something too. Honesty. Jason continued moving forward. He became a different kind of father. Less focused on looking successful, more focused on being present. He no longer cared about proving that he had never failed. He cared about making sure the people he loved never had to guess whether he would stay. Years later, he finally threw away the old financial documents, not because the debt did not matter, because it no longer controlled him. The papers had once represented humiliation, a reminder that he had been fooled. Now they represented something else, a reminder that people are more complicated than their worst decisions. Jason never forgot what Claire did. He never pretended the secrets were acceptable, but he also stopped carrying the anger that kept him connected to the worst day of his life. The folder had opened with a painful truth, but it also opened a door neither of them knew existed. A way forward, not back, never back, forward. The first thing Serena Wilson noticed was not the missing money, it was the suitcase. Owen Ingram had always been the kind of person who appeared exactly where he was needed. He knew what to say, when to smile, and how to make people believe everything was under control. That was why the empty chair at the family meeting felt strange. Owen was supposed to explain the inheritance. Instead, he was on another business trip. At least, that was what everyone believed. Serena stared at the documents on the table and remembered the message she had received the night before. Don't ask questions you're not ready to answer. No name, no explanation, just a warning. She wrote those words in her diary because she knew one thing. Something was hidden, and whoever was hiding it was afraid of what Serena might discover. Serena had never considered herself a detective. She was simply the person who noticed when something did not feel right. Maybe that came from losing her parents young. She learned early that people could leave without warning. Promises could disappear, and sometimes the people who smiled the most were carrying the heaviest secrets. After her aunt passed away, the inheritance became the center of the family's attention. It was not just money, it was memories, a house, a small business, years of work that represented everything her aunt had built. Everyone wanted to honor her wishes, everyone except the person who seemed to be controlling everything, Owen. He was technically only an acquaintance of the family, but over time he became involved in every decision. He organized paperwork, he spoke with lawyers, he explained complicated details. People trusted him because he sounded certain. Serena was different. She listened, she noticed, and she noticed that Owen was always answering questions nobody asked. At first she ignored it. She told herself he was simply helpful. Then the business trip started. Long absences, sudden meetings, unexplained delays. Whenever someone asked where Owen was, there was always a simple answer: work. That word became his shield. Work explained everything, until it didn't. The first strange moment happened when Serena received a bank notification connected to the inherited business. A payment had been made, a large one, but nobody knew why. When Serena asked Owen about it, his reaction was immediate. You don't need to worry about that. The sentence sounded harmless. But it was not an explanation. It was a dismissal. That night, Serena wrote, I expected him to defend himself. I did not expect him to avoid the question. She began looking deeper, not because she wanted to accuse him, because she wanted to prove there was a reasonable explanation. The first discovery was small. A series of payments made during the exact weeks Owen was supposedly traveling for business. The second discovery was worse. The companies receiving the payments had connections to people Owen knew. When Serena confronted him, he changed his story. They were investments. Whose investments? A pause. Family investments. That answer created more questions. The inheritance was not just losing money, someone was moving it, quietly, carefully. Then Lily Riley called Serena. Lily had known Serena for years. She was the one person Serena trusted when everything became confusing. I think you need to know something, Lily said. What? Owen has been telling people different versions of the same story. Serena felt cold. About what? About where the money went. That was the moment Serena understood. The problem was not only the missing money, the problem was the number of explanations. Everyone had a different one, and none of them fit together. Owen finally admitted he had financial problems, but he insisted he was fixing them. I was going to put everything back. Serena looked at him. With what? He had no answer. The truth slowly came together. Owen had hidden debt. Years earlier, he had lost money trying to build a business. Instead of admitting failure, he kept borrowing. Every solution created another problem. The inheritance became his final chance. He convinced himself he was not stealing, he was saving everything. That was the first twist. Owen was not a simple thief. He was someone who had become trapped by his own lies. But then Serena discovered something that changed the entire story. The missing money was not only used to cover Owen's debts, some of it was transferred before the inheritance was even officially completed. Meaning someone had planned this earlier. Someone had prepared. Someone had known exactly what they were doing. Serena searched through old emails. Then she found the message, the one that changed everything. It was from Owen to himself, a draft, never sent. Inside was a confession. He knew the inheritance would be divided. He knew people would trust him. And he knew Serena was the only person who would eventually question the numbers. He wrote that she was the emotional one, the person who would hesitate because she cared about family. That hurt more than the money. Because Serena realized Owen did not just underestimate her, he used the very thing she was proud of, her loyalty. The confrontation happened during a family meeting. Everyone expected Serena to stay quiet. After all, Owen had convinced them she was too sensitive, too suspicious, too emotional. But Serena placed the documents on the table. "I wanted to believe there was another explanation," she said. Owen looked at her. "Serena, don't do this." That sentence confirmed everything, not because he admitted guilt, because he was still trying to control the room. She continued, "The payments, the false explanations, the hidden debt, the business trips that were not what he claimed." Silence filled the room. For the first time, Owen had no story ready. The final revelation came when the lawyer reviewed the documents. Owen had not only hidden his own debt, he had created agreements that protected him if the losses were discovered. He had planned an escape. He was not waiting for a miracle, he was preparing for consequences. The family was devastated. Not only because of the money, because they realized how easily they had trusted someone who knew exactly how to appear trustworthy. The case became public. The truth spread beyond the family. Owen lost his reputation. The business was recovered partially. Justice came, but it did not feel like victory. Serena learned that exposing the truth does not repair everything. Sometimes it only stops the damage from growing. Months later, Serena found one final message from Owen. "I never wanted to hurt anyone." She read it several times because she believed him. That was the hardest part. He did not wake up one day and decide to become someone cruel. He made one bad choice, then another, until protecting the lie became more important than protecting the people around him. Serena kept her diary. The page about the first warning remained. "Don't ask questions you're not ready to answer." She smiled when she read it years later, because she had been afraid of the answer, but she had been more afraid of living with a lie. Owen changed the story of the inheritance forever, but Serena changed something too. She stopped confusing silence with peace. She stopped believing that protecting a family meant protecting every secret inside it. The suitcase, the business trips, the missing money, all of it was connected, and the person who thought Serena would stay quiet became the reason the truth finally came out. After the public investigation ended, Serena expected to feel relief. Instead, she felt tired. People often imagine truth as a powerful moment where everything became clear and everyone moved on. But real life was slower. There were conversations that never happened again. Family members who avoided each other, rooms that felt different because everyone remembered what had been hidden there. Serena struggled with one question more than any other. How had she missed it? Looking back, the signs were everywhere. The rushed explanations, the unnecessary confidence, the way Owen always positioned himself as the person with answers. But hindsight was unfair. At the time, she was not ignoring danger. She was trusting someone she had no reason to distrust. That was what made betrayal painful. The person who caused the damage was someone she had allowed close enough to matter. Lily reminded her of that after everything ended. "You did not lose because you trusted him. Lily said. Serena looked away. Then why does it feel like I did? Because trust makes betrayal possible. Those words stayed with Serena. She never became suspicious of everyone. She never stopped caring. But she learned that kindness did not mean refusing to see reality. Years later, people still talked about the inheritance case. Some remembered the money, some remembered Owen's public downfall, but Serena remembered something smaller. The moment before she opened the first document, the moment when she still believed the truth would be simple. She missed that version of life, but she did not miss the lie. The family eventually rebuilt, not the same way. Some relationships remained damaged, some never recovered. But the silence was gone. And for Serena, that mattered. The person who tried to hide the truth had accidentally given everyone the one thing they needed most, a reason to finally face it. Ariana stood in my aunt's kitchen with rain running from her hair onto the clean tile, one hand pressed under the curve of her stomach. The baby survived, she said. Samantha's teacup slipped from her fingers and broke beside the table. Ariana looked at me, not at the shattered porcelain. Elliot didn't. 7 months earlier, Elliot had ended our engagement with 2 suitcases by the front door. Ariana had disappeared the following morning. Now she was back, pregnant, carrying a hospital envelope with my name printed beneath 2 words I could not make myself understand. Intended mother. The voice in my head, the one I had called June since my first cancer ward, whispered, "Open it." I pushed the envelope away. Before everything broke, our life was made of small promises. Elliot brought coffee in the blue cup because the white one reminded me of hospital walls. Samantha, my cousin, came Sundays with groceries and opinions. Ariana had a key and never knocked. She had been my friend since 14, when she punched a girl for mocking my surgical scar. At 32, I had survived ovarian cancer, 3 operations, and being told I would never carry a child. Elliot and I still had 4 frozen embryos. Ariana offered to carry one. "You gave me a family when mine threw me out," she said. "Let me help you build yours." I should have heard how badly she needed those words to be true. The embryo transfer took 9 minutes. I watched the tiny white flash appear on the monitor and started crying before the doctor even said it was done. Elliot kissed my forehead. Ariana reached for my hand. Samantha stood at the foot of the bed, filming all 3 of us, laughing through her tears. That night, June whispered, "Don't love it yet." I hated her for that. Ariana sent me a photograph of a negative test. No message, just one pink line. At the clinic, she said the blood work confirmed it. She would not meet my eyes. Elliot sat beside her instead of beside me. On the drive home, he kept both hands on the wheel. "We can try again," I said. He swallowed. "Can we?" 3 days later, he packed. He did not say he loved someone else. He said he was tired of living inside my fear. He said every room in our home felt like a waiting room, waiting for scans, waiting for blood results, waiting for a baby that might never come. I threw the blue cup at the wall. He flinched, and I hated him for looking afraid of me. Ariana did not answer when I called. By morning, her apartment was empty. Survival is ugly when nobody is watching. It is eating crackers over the sink, sleeping on the floor because the bed remembers 2 bodies, blocking his number, then checking the blocked folder before dawn. Samantha moved me into Aunt Lydia's house without asking. At dinner, my family discussed weather, grocery prices, and a neighbor's new fence. Nobody said Elliot's name, but silence moved around the table like another relative. Samantha was too careful with me. She took my phone when I drank. She changed the subject whenever I mentioned Ariana. Once, I found her crying in the laundry room. "What do you know?" I asked. "Nothing that will help you." It was not an answer. I let it pass because I was tired of losing people. June said, "Coward." The truth found me beside a display of discounted vitamins. An older woman stared at me in the pharmacy, then smiled with recognition. "Juliana? I'm Ruth Bell. I volunteer at the fertility clinic." I had never met her. She touched my arm. "How is Ariana?" The bleeding frightened her terribly, but I told Elliot that babies can be stubborn. The aisle narrowed around me. Elliot was there? Ruth's smile disappeared. He held her hand through the ultrasound. What ultrasound? She opened her mouth, then closed it. A stranger's casual sentence did what months of silence could not. It unlocked every room. That evening, I searched Elliot's laptop. The password was still my first remission date. There were no love letters or photographs. Only a hotel receipt dated 2 days before Ariana sent the test, and a calendar entry repeated every Thursday, AB Clinic. When I confronted Samantha, she went pale. I knew the pregnancy continued, she said. The floor seemed to tilt. Samantha had received a voicemail from Ariana after the bleeding. There was still a heartbeat. Ariana begged her to tell me in person, but that same afternoon I had collapsed at work with stress-induced heart trouble. I thought I was buying you a few days, Samantha said. Then Elliot told me Ariana had miscarried. I believed him. You deleted the voicemail. I was scared you wouldn't survive another shock. I wanted to scream that surviving without the truth was not survival. Instead, I asked the question that made Samantha look away. Did you know about them? No, she whispered. Then, after too long, not then. June said, there it is. Samantha found them by accident, at a roadside diner 2 towns away. Elliot's hand was on Ariana's stomach. Ariana was crying. When she saw Samantha, she stood so quickly, her chair fell. Elliot followed Samantha outside and said the baby was his and Ariana's. The transfer had failed, he claimed, and they made a terrible mistake afterward. Samantha believed that too. I did not. The dates did not fit. The hotel receipt came before the supposed miscarriage. The affair had begun while I was choosing paint samples for a nursery. I called Elliot from Samantha's phone. He answered on the second ring. Jules? Hearing his voice nearly folded me in half. Is Ariana pregnant? Silence. Is the baby yours? It isn't that simple. People say that when the simple truth would destroy them. I asked where they were. He hung up. Back in Aunt Lydia's kitchen, Ariana finally sat down. She looked smaller than her stomach, exhausted in a way that made anger feel almost cruel. Elliot had died on a wet highway outside Millbrook. His car crossed the center line. The police said he had been driving toward the airport with 2 passports in his bag. Mine and his, Ariana said. He wanted us gone before the birth. Why come here? Because he lied to both of us. She slid the hospital envelope toward me again. I opened it. Inside was the March 11 transfer record. Embryo 4, my egg. Elliot's sperm, Ariana's uterus. For several seconds, the words meant nothing. Then, everything meant too much. The test was never negative, Ariana said. Elliot bought it from a pharmacy. He said you would fall apart if the transfer worked and then failed later. He said we should wait for the heartbeat. And the hotel? Her face broke. The hotel was real. The affair began 3 nights after the transfer. Ariana was terrified, lonely, and ashamed of how much she liked being needed. Elliot was angry at me for being afraid to hope. They crossed a line, then crossed it again because the first time had already ruined everything. I loved him, she said. Not more than you, not better than you, but I did. I could have hated her more easily if she had lied. She told me Elliot planned to claim the clinic had used Ariana's egg. He had convinced her that our agreement would not hold because I was medically fragile. For months, she believed he was protecting the baby from instability. Then she found the legal file in his suitcase. My name was on every page. He wasn't protecting her from you, Ariana said. He was erasing you. That was why she had left him. That was why he was driving toward the airport. He thought she had agreed to disappear. Instead, she had taken the records and come home. The first pain hit her before I could answer. At the hospital, a nurse asked who I was. My mouth opened, but no sound came. Friend felt like a lie. Victim felt useless. Mother felt impossible. Samantha answered for me. She's the baby's mother. Ariana gripped my wrist through another contraction. You can hate me after. I already do. I know. Then she laughed once, a broken little sound, and I laughed too. It was horrible. It was human. The baby arrived 6 weeks early, furious and alive. She weighed 4 pounds, 2 ounces. Her lungs needed help. Her fingers did not. They closed around mine before I had decided anything. June whispered, "Start here." I named her Mara after my mother. The agreement was enforceable. Ariana signed without contest. She asked for no money, only one photograph when Mara left the hospital. I gave her 3. Samantha and I are trying to repair something that may never return to its old shape. Some nights I still wake furious that she chose my heartbeat over my right to know. Some mornings she leaves coffee outside my door in the blue cup she glued back together. Ariana moved north. She writes letters to Mara and sends them to a post office box. I have not decided when or whether Mara will read them. Hope did not return the life I lost. It gave me a different one. Tonight, snow pressed softly against the nursery window. Mara slept against my chest, one tiny ear over the scar where doctors once told me my future had ended. On the dresser sat Ariana's last letter, unopened. In the hallway, Samantha whispered to Aunt Lydia that I was finally asleep. I wasn't. I was listening to my daughter breathe, counting each stubborn breath, while the repaired blue cup cooled beside me. The man in the hospital hallway should have been a stranger. Alice Porter had never seen him before, but when he looked at her and said, "Julian still hasn't told you, has he?" everything around her seemed to stop. She was holding a folder of medical papers. She was waiting for news that could change her entire future. And suddenly, a sentence from someone she did not know felt more frightening than the diagnosis she was trying to understand. "Tell me what?" Alice asked. The man looked uncomfortable, like he had already said too much. Then he walked away. Alice stood there, wondering why the name of her husband's friend had appeared in the one place where she needed certainty. For months, she had believed the hardest thing in her life was fighting an illness. She was wrong. The hardest thing was discovering that, while she was fighting to survive, someone close to her had been fighting to hide the truth. Alice had always been the person who believed tomorrow could be better, even when life gave her reasons not to. She grew up in a family where problems were rarely discussed. People smiled. People moved forward. People pretended everything was fine. Alice learned that silence could look like strength. But after marrying Julian Winters, she wanted something different. She wanted honesty, a home where people could say when they were afraid. Julian was not perfect. That was one of the reasons she loved him. He was emotional, protective, sometimes stubborn. He wanted to solve every problem himself. When Alice became sick, Julian changed. At first, she saw it as love. He attended appointments, he organized paperwork, he made phone calls. He told her not to worry. "I've got us," he would say, and Alice believed him. Because when someone you love says they are holding everything together, you want to believe them. But slowly, small things began to feel strange. Julian started receiving calls he did not explain. He became nervous whenever money was mentioned. He avoided looking at bills. Whenever Alice asked about their finances, he smiled and changed the subject. "You need to focus on getting better." The words sounded caring, but they also made her feel powerless. Her aunt, Bianca Donovan, noticed. Bianca had always been direct. She was not cruel, but she did not pretend. One evening, she asked Alice, "Do you know what is happening with your accounts?" Alice looked confused. "Of course, Julian handles most of that." Bianca became quiet. That silence bothered Alice. "What?" "I just think you should know everything about your own life." Alice defended him immediately. "He's helping me." Bianca nodded. "I hope he is." That answer stayed with Alice. After the hospital encounter, she could not forget the stranger's words. "Julian still hasn't told you." But told her what? Alice began looking carefully, not searching for betrayal, searching for an explanation. She found the first clue in an old bank statement, a payment, small enough to ignore, repeated enough to matter. The account was connected to Julian, but the reason was unclear. When Alice asked him, he reacted instantly. "It's nothing." The same phrase. Again, the phrase people use when they want something to disappear. Alice looked at him. "Why are you scared of a question?" Julian had no answer. That was when she knew. Something existed between them that she did not know. The truth came slowly. Julian had hidden debt, a lot of it. Before Alice became sick, he had made financial decisions trying to build a better future. Some investments failed, some choices were careless. Instead of admitting the problem, he borrowed money, then borrowed more. Each decision was supposed to be temporary. Each solution created another problem. But the worst part was not the debt. It was that Julian kept it hidden while Alice was facing her illness. She felt betrayed, not because he struggled, everyone struggles, because he decided she was too fragile to know the truth. "You weren't protecting me," Alice said. Julian looked away. "I didn't want you to carry more pain. You chose for me." That sentence hurt both of them, because it was true. The first twist was that Julian had not created the debt because he was selfish. He created it because he was terrified. Terrified of losing Alice, terrified of being unable to save the life they built. But fear did not erase the damage. Alice needed space. She considered leaving, starting over. Not because she stopped loving him, because she no longer knew if love could survive without trust. Then Bianca discovered something unexpected. The hospital stranger had been Julian's former financial advisor, and he had not approached Alice to expose Julian. He had approached her because he believed Julian was making another mistake. Julian had been selling personal belongings, taking extra work, trying desperately to repair everything. Alice was confused. "If he was trying to fix it, why hide it?" Bianca answered quietly. "Because sometimes people are more ashamed of failing than they are afraid of losing everything." That changed the way Alice saw the situation. Not completely, but enough. Then came the final discovery. A hidden account. Alice expected to find more debt. Instead, she found savings. Money Julian had secretly put aside. She did not understand. Until she saw the name attached. It was a medical assistance fund for Alice. Julian had been preparing for treatments he thought they might not afford. The same man who hid the debt had also been quietly trying to protect her future. The truth was complicated. Julian had failed. He had lied. He had made choices Alice never would have accepted. But he had also spent months trying to give her hope. The confrontation between them was not angry. It was painful. "I don't know what hurts more," Alice said. "That you were struggling?" Julian looked at her. "Or that you thought I couldn't stand beside you?" Julian's eyes filled with tears. "I was afraid you would look at me and see someone who failed you." Alice sat quietly, because she understood that fear. She had spent years afraid of becoming a burden because of her illness. They were both hiding the same thing. They were both afraid they were not enough. Alice still had a choice. She could leave. Nobody would blame her. But she realized something. The future she wanted was not a perfect life. It was a real one, a life where people admitted when they were scared, a life where mistakes were faced instead of hidden. She chose to confess her own feelings too. "I was angry because I needed you," she said, "and I was hurt because I thought I was alone." Julian took her hand. "I'm sorry." This time it sounded different, not like an excuse, like an acceptance. The months that followed were not easy. They rebuilt slowly. They talked about money. They talked about fear. They talked about the things they had avoided. The illness remained part of their lives. The debt remained a difficult memory, but something unexpected happened. They became closer than before. Not because nothing bad happened, because they finally stopped pretending nothing bad could happen. Years later, Alice still remembered the stranger in the hospital hallway, the sentence that opened the door, the fear she felt, the future she thought was disappearing. She never forgot that moment. Because she had believed she was about to lose everything. Instead, she discovered something she never expected. Sometimes the person hiding the truth is not always trying to destroy your life. Sometimes they are simply a person who became lost while trying to save it. And sometimes the road back is not about returning to who you were before. It is about building something stronger from what almost broke. After everything was revealed, Alice realized forgiveness was not a single moment. It was a process. There were still nights when she remembered the hidden account, the unanswered questions, the months when Julian carried fear alone while she believed everything was normal. Trust returned slowly, not through promises, through actions. Julian stopped trying to be the person who always had answers. He started admitting when he was afraid. He started asking for help. For Alice, that change mattered more than any apology. Because she never needed a perfect husband, she needed a real one. Bianca watched their relationship change from a distance. One afternoon, she told Alice, "You know what surprised me?" Alice smiled. "What?" "That you both thought protecting each other meant hiding things." Alice looked at the floor. Maybe Bianca was right. For years, both of them had confused love with carrying every burden alone. The illness taught them about weakness, the debt taught them about honesty, and the secret taught them that even good intentions could create painful consequences. The stranger from the hospital never appeared again, but Alice often thought about him. A random person, a random sentence, a random moment that changed the direction of her life. She wondered how many turning points arrived quietly, how many times life changed before people even noticed. Her marriage was not the same as before. It was different, stronger, more honest. There were still arguments. There were still difficult days, but now they faced them together. Years later, Alice kept the old bank statements in a box. Not because she wanted to remember the betrayal, because she wanted to remember the moment everything changed. The moment she learned that love was not measured by how little pain two people caused each other. It was measured by whether they were willing to face the pain they created. Julian had lost his way. Alice had almost lost hope, but they found something neither expected. A second chance that did not erase the past. A second chance that finally allowed them to stop running from it.